After a long day of sightseeing, hill walking, or just going for a drive, there was nothing quite like setting up home from home and laying out a well-deserved feast. Yes, the Great British Picnic.
I can remember going from Blackpool to the Lake District where we'd meet an uncle and aunt and a cousin who'd come down from Newcastle on Tyne, and we'd meet at a certain spot in the Lake District and we'd have a big picnic. And they were big picnics. You know, my mother would make lovely bacon and egg pies and I mean, all sorts of stuff. Is it proper eating? You weren't going out just having the odd sandwich. This was, this was really lavish stuff. No wine, I seem to remember, but I think that was because my uncle and aunt from Newcastle were teetotal.
That seems a bit of a pity, but yes, the picnic. It was an event in itself.
Do you know, I can't remember a time now with my daughter, who is 16, that I've suggested let's go out for a picnic. A picnic is something that kind of happens alongside another event now. But in days of old, in my childhood anyway, going for a picnic was the outing. And it was great fun, packing up the hamper, and Mother made beautiful homemade cakes and everything to take along. And we would just find a field, or we'd drive somewhere, a hillside, and open it all out on a tablecloth and sit and eat. It was just fantastic.
We would picnic regularly. We'd go out to the New Forest a lot. In those days, you could drive across the forest. There weren't designated car parks. You could just go where you wanted. And we would take picnics, and they would never be gingham tablecloth, hamper. It was all Tupperware. Everything had to be in Tupperware. I was obsessed with Tupperware. My dad hated Tupperware. I learned to hate Tupperware, you know, this sort of dull plastic stuff. And my mum would sort of prepare meals, but then put it all in Tupperware and take it out there. So it wasn't like picnic food. It was what we would have had on the dinner table at home, but in Tupperware. We'd go out and eat it all.
Big red buses, Big Ben, the biggest day out of them all. You always dreamed of a trip to the capital, the big smoke. Almost too big for little ones to understand.
Going to London was quite a major number, really. And I think the first time I went, I was invited by my best friend, who was also called Jennifer. And we were going to the Carlton Towers Hotel, a posh hotel, for lunch. I was very nervous about this, and I suppose either I chose or my mother made me wear my new coat, which I remember was turquoise and rather itchy and tight-fitting and hot, and I got very hot on the journey up. And I was so nervous by the time I sat down at this very posh restaurant that I ordered the only thing I knew on the menu, which was fish and chips. And as it arrived, I was sick all over the table. It was just so awful, one of the worst experiences of my life.
If you timed your journey to the capital just right, you might have been lucky enough to bump into its most famous residence.
All of us went to Buckingham Palace, and we sat all night long when there was a marriage or a public appearance when they went by, and we'd be glued outside Buckingham Palace. And when they went by, you couldn't see anything, really. You thought, and then your dad would lift you on his shoulder, and everybody would scream the place down. And coming out onto the balcony, people went demented.
If you couldn't make it to the palace, sometimes the palace could make it to you.
We were told that the Queen was going to be driving through East London one particular day. I was in my primary school, and so, as a special treat, we were told that we could go and watch. And it was a treat. I mean, this was the Queen, you know. So we all walked from Bonner Street all the way to Mile End. It's a long old walk. We walked, you know, marching, and you all had to be very smart, and you all had to be in line and everything, and the teachers were keeping us in line. And then we got to Mile End, and we were told to sit against the wall and wait. And so we sat there, and this was at about 12:30. And we sat, and we were told, you know, no talking. And we sat, and we sat, and we sat. And then at about 2:15, one of the teachers went, I'm sure, I think this is her, I think she's coming now, I think she's coming now. And there's this big old black car and another couple of cars behind it. And it went, oh, right, that was the Queen, was it? So the teachers went, come along, children. And we all stood up and we all marched back to school, and that was it. That was me royal visit.
I suppose if you knew that a member of the royal family was coming anywhere near your town, you needed to make every effort to go out there because, well, you didn't actually see them so much. There wasn't so much coverage on television or possibly in the papers either. So it was a mega event. And yeah, if you were able to get to the front of that crowd with your little flag and wave as the Queen or the Duke went by, then, you know, that made your year.
My mum wanted to do her bit for the Queen's Silver Jubilee. And she, shall we say, acquired a flag. Well, we flew it above the pub. And the next thing I know, we had the police knocking the door. My mother is only flying the Royal Standard that flies above Buckingham Palace in Windsor when the Queen is in residence. God knows where she got that from.
There's hardly a seaside resort in Britain which doesn't have a carnival of some sort. But the biggest, happiest, brightest, jolliest, noisiest, gayest, liveliest and most popular of all is, yes, you've guessed it, Southend-on-Sea. It's the highlight of the summer season, not only for the thousands who flock here from London and everywhere else, but even for the people who live here.
Carnivals. Why do we do it?
In Bethnal Green, there was always a carnival every year, and it was in the middle of the summer, and I loved it. There did seem to be more special days then. There was a carnival queen, and I always looked up at the carnival queen and thought, oh, how wonderful is that to be the queen of the carnival. But I loved it. We would sit by the side and we would have balloons, and you'd wave your balloon, and all of the floats would go along. Multicoloured music playing, people up there playing their instruments and scenes out of shows, and it was just lovely. It was a big mass of colour and music, and there were floats that weren't so good, but I didn't care because to me this was a magical day. It was the day of the carnival.
We always used to go to the Romsey Carnival. And I can remember it was a big event for me. I used to go down and stay with my grandparents and my great auntie and uncle who lived in Prince's Road, and that's more or less where the carnival started. So we could run up to the top and see them first. And I do remember having to throw the pennies, which they don't do today because it's quite dangerous when a penny hits you. But it used to be very exciting, and I always wanted to take part.
But not everyone wants to dress up and ride a duck.
I didn't like all of these people getting together and looking so happy, which sounds a terrible thing to say, but it was like fake happiness. They'd be on the back of the float then. We'd have to go because it was part of the sort of Southampton ritual. Everyone had to go to the carnival. We go to exactly the same spot. I knew the paving stone where we'd been stood the year before, and as we arrived at that paving stone, I'd look down and think, oh, here we go, another inordinate wait while this lot wends its way through the city so that I can see. Like that. Forget it.
I used to think that Romsey Carnival was just fantastic and the floats were amazing when I was young. But once I went to college down in Bridgewater, down the West Country, now they do carnivals. I mean, their floats are just incredible. They've got generators, lights, working models and everything. They're just, I mean, they literally take 18 months to make the floats. And then thinking back to our ones in Romsey, they were all right. A little Heath Robinson, shall we say.
And finally, from one tradition to another, much more ancient. The one day of the year where you were encouraged to run round in circles all day long.
May Day was a special day when we danced round the maypole. And I remember learning the maypole, and we could wear very pretty frocks then. It was a celebration. And you had boys and girls, and there was a special rhythm, and I can still see the maypole, and you had to learn how to do it, because the first was a walk round, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you had to learn to plait it. So you had to go an in and out step, and then later it got even more complicated, and at the end you'd got this wonderful design coming round from the top of the maypole down.
My village school, we did maypole dancing, which of course the boys absolutely hated and the girls loved it. But it was one way to get rid of all your energy. I mean, I think our favourite one to do was the spider web one, which came out from the pole as a web and looked great. But, I mean, talk about stretch the teacher's patience, trying to get young children to skip, because boys don't skip, and also to do it in some sort of order, because, of course, it gives it away when it doesn't work.